Welcome to Best Served Cold, a Bald Millennials podcast, where we drink wine and talk about crime.
Presented to you by Tama J and Laura Elise. Welcome back to the Best Served Cold podcast.
The podcast where we drink wine and talk about crime.
Yes.
The one that I briefly forgot the name of.
It also would have been briefly introduced in our pre-recorded intro.
Oh, yeah.
So.
But I recorded that so long ago now, I can't remember.
So people are going to be listening to this episode thinking, oh, cool, Best Served Cold. And then they come in and you're like, oh, what fucking show is this again?
Anyway, welcome to Best Served Cold, the semi-professional, mostly not, kind of all-right true crime podcast.
Almost semi, not quite half chub.
Yeah.
Podcast. Just
like
below.
A quarter chub podcast.
Yeah, like three quarters flaccid. Welcome back to, this is episode 6 now, I think, right?
Isn't it 7? Is it 6?
I think it's 6, because I think last time was the 5th episode. I believe this is the 6th episode of our little old podcast that we started not too long ago in isolation, trying to forget about, the fucking.
And now we have to keep it going.
Struggle.
Outside of isolation.
Yeah.
And I love that the cats have been quiet all night and now they've decided it's like they sense it.
Yeah.
Like they have a spidey sense for like when we don't want them to be doing things and then they start doing things.
Yeah, I feel like I've grown like 20 years.
Anyway.
In my life.
So we promised you last week that this week we would have our old audio equipment back. And I'm sorry to tell you that we lied to you because we couldn't get it fixed in time. So you never know. You may get some background noises of the kitten playing with things. You may get some more ASMR. We'll see what happens.
A lot more ASMR. Look, it makes no real difference. It's just you might hear things.
It just picks up background noises.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. I mean, pubs are opening back up soon.
Yes, I'm so excited to go to the pub. So excited.
Things are really picking up I think it's next Monday, isn't it? That it's
June 1st.
Yeah.
Also, I love that they're just such assholes that they waited till Monday. Like, either do it Friday or just like, why Monday?
Maybe it's because they want people to celebrate the fact that pubs are opening up again.
By not going to pubs because it's a Monday.
Party on a weekend with your max of 10 people.
Oh, well, at least it's something. I'm grateful for anything. Also, I just wanted to say, if you're listening to this and you like it, I would humbly ask that I always feel like such a bit of a shithead asking this, but I would ask that you leave us a review because we have had a lot of fun doing this in isolation and would like to continue doing this, but as much fun as it is, because we have so many other things on, like I'm a graphic designer and I work full-time and I do uni full-time and Tama works full-time and has a band and does a bunch of other things, we sort of need to be also able to justify continue doing it.
Yeah.
So if no one likes it and no one listens to it, I don't know.
Yeah, it would really help us out, especially with podcasts now and everything to do with like content creation, like being a YouTuber and all that kind of stuff. It's very saturated at the moment. So it would really help even just getting that so we can help define our show a bit more.
Yeah, but I have this weird obsession with getting our podcast on the new and noteworthy list on iTunes, which not iTunes, Apple
iTunes.
Podcasts.
Oh, right.
Which apparently you need lots of reviews and downloads to do so. So please, if you're listening, I would humbly request you leave us.
Yeah, and anyone who's good at hacking.
If you can hack us some reviews, that'd be great.
Yeah, or like downloads, then.
Yeah.
I mean.
Daniel Jacinto.
If Apple Podcast is listening, that was
for legal reasons, that was a joke.
Yeah, and we humbly request that people do not do that. Daniel Jacinto. Daniel Jacinto.
We probably shouldn't have used his full name.
Doesn't care.
Okay. So this week, I feel like I thought this was going to be a short one for me because I started looking into it and
they always seem short, don't they?
And well, it's only one murder. She's not a serial killer. She's a murderess. Shout out to my good friend Noni, if you are listening.
Yes.
She was actually the person that suggested this. I had never heard of this person before, and I have no idea how I've gone my entire life in Australia having never heard of this person before.
And these are areas that we're both relatively familiar with as well.
Yeah. So, shout out to Noni. Thank you for suggesting it. This episode, or my portion of the episode, is dedicated to you. Okay, so again, I have no idea how I've gone my whole life without knowing who this person is or knowing anything about her. But today I'm going to be talking about Australia's first female killer that was sentenced to life in prison. And that is Katherine Knight, aka Cannibal Kathy.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like I said, I really thought this was going to be a short one because technically she only ever killed one man. But the more I got into her backstory and what happened prior to the murder, she has a really fucked up backstory and she was just not right in the head in general. So there's a lot to cover. There's actually like heaps of stuff to cover before you even get to the murdering part. Pardon me, I just burped.
Wow.
Okay, so do you want to do a little spiel out, or shall I just jump right into it?
Let's just jump right into it because people have read what mine's about, but they probably don't know.
I don't know anything about yours. I'm excited.
So we'll just save it for later.
So, Katherine Knight, she is messed up. So, Katherine Knight was born October 1955. She was born into a very unconventional and dysfunctional family, kind of like from the get-go.
Okay.
So her mother, Barbara, they lived in a small town of Aberdeen. She was married to a man called Jack. They had 4 sons together before Barb started an affair with a friend and a co-worker of her husband, Ken Knight. Sorry, I just confused myself.
Okay.
So she was married to Jack at that time and she met Ken Knight, who's Catherine's father. Him and her husband were co-workers and friends, and they had an affair.
Shit.
So because it's such a small town, like a small rural
word gets around
town,
yeah,
and like Barbara and Jack at the time are like I don't know this, but I'm assuming they're like the it couple. That's how I picture them, like walking through the main street in ball gowns. So it becomes this huge scandal. So Barb leaves her husband and her and Ken move to Moree. So they have 4 additional children, including twin girls, one of which is Katherine Knight. And it's weird that, like, nothing really gets mentioned about her twin at all. There's, like, one comment in passing that we'll get to, but, like, nothing really comes up, which I
guess people don't really want to be associated with what happened, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
Kind of makes sense.
So in 1959, Barbara's ex-husband dies, and 2 of her sons who'd been living with him, 2 of them, the other 2 lived with their aunt in Sydney. They move in. So there's now 8 of them living in one house.
Yes.
And this is when we sort of start the same usual bullshit that seems to happen with all these people. So Catherine's father, Ken Knight, was an alcoholic who was abusive and raped their mother up to 10 times a day.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So obviously
10 times a day.
Yeah. So obviously Barbara is not quite right in the head, and she would often share grossly intimate details of their sex life and how much she hated sex and men with the children. So Knight claims once when she was talking to her mother of an act that a partner at the time wanted her to do that Katherine didn't, her mother told her to put up with it and stop complaining. So it kind of like goes full circle that obviously her mother's passing on these unhealthy views of men and sex that she has. So Katherine has claimed that she was frequently sexually assaulted by different members of the family up until she was 11. So Barbara's great-grandmother was Indigenous, and Barbara, Katherine's mother, was actually quite proud of this. But obviously being the time that it was, the area was like rife with racism, and it was kept a secret that Barbara was Indigenous, and that caused also tension between the family. So it's just this kind of like boiling pot of family secrets. Everyone's like sweeping things under the rug. People are getting abused. It's not a good time.
A lot of stuff to deal with at an early age.
At a very early age. A lot of the timelines on this sort of stuff are kind of fuzzy, so I'm not sure how old she was when all this stuff is happening. I just know that she was allegedly being assaulted up until she was 11.
Shit.
Yeah. So in 1969, the only family member that Katherine was really close to, Oscar Knight, committed suicide. And she maintains that his ghost frequently visited her after he passed.
This is all going so well.
Yeah. So it's like her mum's crazy. She doesn't...
Dad's a rapist.
Her dad's an alcoholic rapist and other family members are rapists. She doesn't get along with her siblings. And then the only person she is really close to commits suicide.
Yeah.
So in 1969, the whole family moves back to Aberdeen, which is where her mother grew up before they had to move because of the scandal. Okay, so in school, Katherine, from what I can see, was a bit of a contradictory character. So she was known as a bully by other students and was often would like, what's the word? Like use her size against smaller students.
Oh, okay.
Because she was not like...
Like Son of Sam.
Yeah.
A bit of a bigger person.
What I could find, she assaulted at least one boy, like a student, with a weapon, and also once injured a teacher, which she claims was in self-defense. But the more you get to know her, the more you're like, yeah, sure, sweetie.
Okay.
However, when she was not on her like murderous rampage usual bullshit, she was actually a model student and earned a lot of awards while she was at school.
Okay.
So at age 15, without having learnt to read or write, which I found odd at age 15.
She's a star student, but she can't read or write.
Yeah, I don't really know how that
How does that work?
gelled. I don't know, maybe like star student behaviour-wise.
Well, she's a star student, Aberdeen, like maybe a population of like 15 people.
Yeah, so there's not like much debate.
Yeah, there's like 2 kids in the classroom.
So she leaves high school at age 15, having not learned to read or write, which I was like, how do you get to 15 without learning to read or write? And she gets a job at a cutting factory, like clothes and materials. Like they cut the...
Oh, okay.
Like the bits of...
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called. I don't live in the 50s.
It's called a thing.
It's called a thing. So a year later, she gets her, and I quote, dream job cutting up offal at an abattoir.
Well, okay.
She's then quickly promoted to boning, and she's also given her own set of butcher knives, which she keeps hanging above her bed so they would, and I quote, would always be handy if I needed them.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we're off to a great start,
What the fuck?
So she also allegedly loved watching the pigs be slaughtered. So in 1973, aged 18, she meets her first husband, David Stanford Kettle, who was a co-worker at the abattoir, and they have beautiful, romantic marriage full of love. And if you can't sense the sarcasm in my voice,
it's there.
It's there. So David was known as a heavy drinker, but not in like a nasty way. He had his reasons. So before working in the abattoir, he used to work on the railways at Coffs Harbour, and he'd witnessed his best friend killed in a shunting accident. And I looked up shunting because I had no idea what it was.
What is shunting?
And it's like where they direct the different like carriages that are carrying cargo onto like different fronts. Does that make sense? So there's not really like heaps of details about the death of his friend. I'm assuming he would have been like crushed maybe by like one of the carriages. Anyway, it's very sad. So he witnessed that.
Shunting is a weird term for like a death or a thing that like to die from.
Yeah.
He died shunting.
And David also witnessed a school bus full of children hit a train in which 6 children were killed, and he helped rescue some kids as well as pull off the dead bodies.
Oh, fuck.
So we'll perhaps forgive the excessive drinking.
We'll allow him the occasional...
He had his reasons.
Sip of the bourbon.
So after causing several derailments during shuntings, he was a shunter.
He was a shunter.
Because he fell asleep. Oopsie. He was transferred from his job in Coffs Harbour to Muswellbrook. However, his behaviour gets worse and he's eventually fired, getting a job at the abattoir with our good friend, Katie.
Lovely.
So after he begins dating Katherine, he would also occasionally partner with her twin, which is, I'm assuming they mean have sex with her twin, which I thought was really weird.
They would partner...
Yeah.
But,
that's just like, that comment is super casually dropped in like a whole big article about her.
What is the comment?
Well, I didn't write it verbatim, but it
Right.
just says after he begins dating Katherine, he'd also occasionally partner with her twin, which I took to mean he also fucks her twin sister.
Yeah. God.
Or they have threesomes, which is even worse.
This is like a Phoebe
I don't want to
Buffet
think. Yeah, I don't want to think about it too
Ursula
much.
situation.
So in town, Knight is known for physically threatening anyone who would upset her. So she has a reputation for having a temper and not being afraid to use it.
Mm-hmm.
When they were married in 1974, they both rocked up to the service on a motorcycle with Kellett drunkenly driving the motorcycle. So he's off his
Great.
tits at their wedding.
Fantastic.
When they arrived, Barbara, Catherine's mother, gives Kellett some advice, and this is a direct quote. "You better watch this one or she'll fucking kill you. Stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you're fucked. Don't ever think of playing up on her. She'll fucking kill you." So that's what her mother said about her. So on their, I fucking love this next part. On their wedding night, so just after this moving speech that Catherine's mother has given her new husband,
Yeah.
because he fell asleep after only having sex with her 3 times, Katherine was not satisfied and strangles him.
Okay.
Not killing him,
But
strangles him. So, surprise,
Very
surprise, the marriage proves to be incredibly violent. On one occasion, after arriving home late from a darts competition, because he'd reached the finals, that's why he was late, because he was winning.
Oh, good on
A
him.
heavily pregnant Katherine burns all his clothes and shoes, hits him across the head with a frying pan.
Okay.
Kellett flees the house, collapsing in the neighbour's house, and he's then later treated for a fractured skull. So she,
Shit.
hit him with a frying pan.
It must have been like a cast iron or something.
Yeah. Well, that
Intense.
time, it would probably...
Because when is this in the
This is back in, like, the 80s.
80s? Fuck, dude.
So the police want him to press charges, but unsurprisingly, Kellett is fucking terrified of her.
Yeah.
And also, she allegedly shows up and, like, is like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I just have a temper," and, like, talks him out of it.
Yeah.
So in 1976, sorry, the 70s, not the 80s. So in 1976, just after the birth of their first child, Kellett fucks off with another woman and moves to Queensland. As you would,
As you
because
fucking would.
she's insane.
Yeah.
And this doesn't bode well with Katherine, and she takes just a deep dive into, like, the fucking what the fuck. So she's seen the next day around town violently swinging the pram with their newborn baby inside from side to side. She's admitted to hospital and diagnosed with postnatal depression, and she spends several weeks in hospital recovering. However, upon being released, she pops 2-month-old Melissa on the railway line shortly before a train was due. She steals an axe, goes into town, and threatens to kill anyone she comes across. The baby is fine. A local man named Old Ted found and rescued the baby. So Knight is arrested and taken to hospital again, but makes a miraculous recovery overnight and signs herself out the next day. How this woman was allowed to keep her child,
Yeah.
I do
Because
not
I know
know.
those hospital, the whole situation with those is so fucking bizarre.
Well, it's the 70s, so they didn't really have a good grasp
But it's all
on mental
like,
illness.
yeah, and exactly. But even still today, it's like really kind of
Yeah.
tricky. Like you could admit yourself or be admitted, and then be like the next day, "Oh, I'm fine," and then take yourself out.
Yeah, it doesn't stop though. A few days later, she slashes the face of a woman in town and demands this woman
Shit.
drive her to Queensland to track down Kellett. The woman manages to escape at a service station and call the police, but by the time the police arrive, Katherine has already taken a young boy hostage and is threatening to kill him. This is possibly the best part of the story. Police attack her with brooms and manage to, like, take her out. I guess they did it so they wouldn't hurt the little boy. It's the best thing ever.
Oh, picture the 2 cops whacking her with fucking brooms. Oh my god.
So they get a weapon and she's admitted to Morisset Psychiatric Hospital.
Okay.
She tells the nurses there that she'd planned to kill the mechanic at the service station because he'd repaired Kellett's car, which allowed him to leave. She was then going to kill Kellett and his mother.
Fuck.
And this is the part where you're like, maybe our boy David deserved to die. He doesn't, but maybe he did. Because upon hearing this, Kellett leaves his current girlfriend and moves back to Aberdeen with his mother to take care of her.
What?
So she's just admitted she wants to kill him, and he's like, you know what? I should go back.
I love this bitch.
And take care of her. So in August, Knight is released into the care of her mother-in-law and ex-husband. Ex-husband. They move to Brisbane, where she gets another job at an abattoir. How she's allowed to work in an abattoir after all of this,
I imagine stabbing things
I
that aren't
don't
humans
know.
would be good, like therapy for her. I imagine.
And on the 6th of March 1980, they have another daughter, Natasha Marie. Again, how she's still allowed to have her children at this point is just beyond me. So David Kellett has been quoted as remembering another scene, another scene during the marriage, rather. One morning he woke to find Catherine sitting astride his chest, a knife in her hand, grazing David's throat. Catherine just laughed at him, saying how easy it would have been for her to kill him.
No.
Yeah.
No. No, I'm driving the fuck to... I'm swimming to New Zealand at this point.
So in 1984, Catherine actually leaves Kellett and moves back to Aberdeen. Did I already say that? I think I already said that.
Did you?
I don't know.
I don't think you did.
I'm confusing myself.
Okay.
So she goes back to Aberdeen and returns to the original abattoir she used to work at, but she injures her back and can't work and goes on the disability pension and moves into housing commission.
Oh, that's the life.
Yeah.
That's the life.
So there's 2 more relationships before we get to the big one that I'm just going to briefly cover. Like I said, there's a lot of shit to get through before you get to
not the good shit, but
the big event. So in 1986, Knight meets 38-year-old miner David Saunders. A few months later, he moves in with her, although he keeps his old apartment in Scone, because surely everything about her would just be like one big red flag. So he'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna keep my own house. Knight soon becomes jealous regarding what he does when she's not around. So when he goes back to his own apartment, she's like, what are you doing?
okay.
She'd often kick him out. He'd move back to his apartment, and then she'd beg him to come back, and the cycle would continue over and over again and over again. In 1987, Knight slits the throat of Saunders' 2-month-old dingo pup as an example of what would happen to him if he ever had an affair. She then knocks him out with a frying pan.
Gee, she loves the frying pan.
Yeah. In 1988, Catherine gives birth to a third daughter, Sarah, which prompts David to put a deposit on a house for them, which Catherine uses her interior design flair on, covering nearly every exposed space, including the ceilings, with animal skins, skulls, horns, rusty animal traps, leather jackets, old boots, machetes, rakes, and pitchforks. Next week on Grand Design.
Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah. So the tipping point for old Davy is when they have a fight. Catherine hits him in the face with an iron and stabs him in the stomach with a pair of scissors.
Sorry to interrupt you, but the tipping point isn't the fucking animal skin.
Or the puppy having its throat slit.
The tipping point is like, oh, well, she stabbed me, so the bitch is a bit crazy.
Yeah. So
What the fuck are you doing,
He
dude?
moves back to Scone and goes into hiding, and she tries to find him on numerous occasions, but no one will admit to knowing where he is because he has
Fuck
good friends,
that.
apparently.
Yeah, dude, no way.
And what's really sad is several months later, he actually comes out of hiding and tries to return to visit his daughter because they had a daughter together. But Catherine has gone to the police saying that he was the violent one, and she's granted an AVO against him, so he can't see his own daughter.
Oh, that's sad.
Despite the fact that she was the one that stabbed him.
And he has
with
a puncture
pair of
wound
scissors.
in his stomach.
Yeah.
Like,
So her last husband, there's actually not a lot of information on it. It's speculated that it was actually kind of a cruisy marriage for her. So 43-year-old former co-worker John Chillingworth, they meet in 1990. They have a son named Eric. So she's got 4 kids at this stage. Their relationship lasts for 3 years without any sort of
wow, okay.
big events.
Just making progress.
And while they're married, Catherine meets Jon Price, who they have an affair together. And that's what ultimately she leaves the other John for. So John Charles Thomas Price was born April 1955. He was the father of 3 of his own children when him and Knight began having an affair while she was still married to the other John. So he was known as a, and I quote, terrific bloke, liked by everyone.
A good cobber.
Yeah. Price's children apparently liked Katherine. He was making a pretty penny at the local mines, and apart from their violent arguments that they had,
And
is
adultery.
exactly how it was worded, by the way, violent arguments, quote, life was a bunch of roses. So his own marriage ends in 1988. His 2-year-old daughter remains in his ex-wife's custody, and his 2 older children live with him. Allegedly, because it was quite a small town, he was actually quite aware of Catherine's violent history when they got married. Why the fuck you would marry her? No idea.
I don't know how the fuck...
This woman also, can I just... Not that looks are not everything, but she's not an attractive woman. So she must have had a way with words. The fact that she managed to get 4 separate men to marry her.
And considering... I'm just listening to this going, like, we went so long being perpetually single. I'm like, this bitch is finding... She's a fucking nutcase working at an abattoir with pre-packaged families.
Yeah.
A history of adultery and stabbing people. Animal skin in her fucking house. And blokes just going, yeah, right, yeah, no worries. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Anyway, we're about to really... It's all downhill from here, let's
Oh,
just
boy.
say that. So in 1988, Knight and Price fight over his refusal to marry her.
Yes, you would.
Pointed look at you.
This is not the not the time to be pulling this shit.
So, he probably didn't want to marry her because he knew she was fucking mental. She allegedly went as far as, and this part made me chuckle, she went as far as stealing his money and just buying herself an engagement ring with his money.
Which is something that you have quoted.
Yeah, it's something I've joked about doing, so be careful. This
quote
could be
unquote
you.
joked.
So in retaliation for him not wanting to marry her, she videotapes products that he had allegedly, quote, stolen from work. So even though they're actually out-of-date medical kits that he grabbed from the rubbish pile, she films all these products. And because of protocol, his boss of 17 years is forced to fire him.
Oh,
because he just
shit.
doesn't have a choice.
Well, yeah, it's the company property.
Yeah. So that day he kicks her out of the house and she returns to old house while news spreads around the small town of what's happened. So a few months later, fucking God knows why, Price restarts the relationship with Katherine, but refuses to let her move into the house. So their fighting becomes crazier and more frequent to the point where most of Jon's friends won't have anything to do with him while she's around.
Been there.
Makes sense. So Katherine was trying to wrestle control of the house, which Price owned, and got into conflict with Price's kids, accusing them of molesting her own children. So in February 2000, Price finally draws a line in the sand after Knight stabs him in the chest and kicks her out of the house. These men seem to have a thing with being like, stabbing, that's my hard limit.
Yeah. Well, you fucked me up, so...
Yeah. So February 29th, he stops by Scone Magistrates Court and files a restraining order against Katherine to try and keep her away from him and his children.
As you fucking should.
That afternoon, Price tells his co-workers, so I guess he got another job, that if he doesn't show to work tomorrow, it will be because Price murders him.
Okay.
Spoiler alert. That's exactly what happens. So his co-workers actually plead with him not to return home because they have obviously seen what she's like and would have realised that he'd been stabbed in the chest.
Yeah, the previous stabbings have been a sign, if anything.
Yeah, so his co-workers plead with him not to return home, but he states he's terrified that Katherine will kill his children if he didn't, which I was a bit confused about this part because they weren't living together at that stage because he kicked her out, but this isn't
But they're in the same
really
general area.
explained.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess so.
So that makes kind of makes sense because she would know where they would live.
Yeah. So Price returns to his home to find that his children aren't there. They've been sent away by Katherine for a sleepover at a friend's house, and Katherine is also gone. He spends the evening with his neighbours because he doesn't want to go home in case she is there, before returning home finally at 11 p.m. and going to bed. So earlier that day, Katherine had bought new black lingerie, and she also makes a weird videotape of all her children while she's like commenting over the top, and people have interpreted it's her like will.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
So she's hoping to kill herself.
Yeah, so she arrives at Price's home while he's asleep, watches TV for a few minutes, then she has a shower and then wakes up Price and they have sex and fall asleep.
But what?
Yeah, why you'd have sex with her, I don't know. He was probably terrified of her, to be fair.
She managed to have a shower, watch TV, have a shower, wake him up by fucking him.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, he was probably terrified of her, so he was like, please just, like, sit on my dick for a bit and then leave me alone.
Imagine that. This chick wants to kill you, you just wake up, she's riding your dick.
Yeah, it's not a good time.
Yeah.
So 6 a.m. the next day, neighbours become concerned because Price's car is still in his driveway and he hadn't arrived at work. So an employer sends someone to his house to check. Both the neighbours and his co-worker try knocking on his bedroom window to wake him up, thinking maybe he's just slept in. But after noticing blood on the front doorknob, they call the police.
Ooh.
Police break down the door at 8 a.m., finding Price's body and Katherine Knight comatose on the floor after having taken heaps of pills. So I'm assuming that she's tried to commit suicide. She's tried to
kill herself, yeah.
I'm just going to add in our friendly little disclaimer here that if you're not a fan of gore, now is the time to maybe scrub ahead 5 minutes because it's really not good from here on out. So according to the autopsy report, Knight had stabbed Price with her butcher's knife while he slept. According to the blood evidence on the wall, he wakes up and tries to turn the light on before attempting to escape. She chases him through the house. He manages to get all the way to the front door and open the door, which is why there was blood on the doorknob.
Wow.
But he either has stumbled back inside or Katherine drags him back in, where he finally bleeds out and dies.
Oh, jeez.
The autopsy report states that he was stabbed roughly 37 times in the front and back, with several internal organs pierced.
Fuck.
At some stage that night, Katherine also takes his wallet and drives into town and withdraws $1,000 from his bank account, which is just like fucking salt in the wound.
Fuck.
Okay, so here we go. Several hours after he dies, we're remembering also that this is a woman who's worked in an abattoir for several years. So several hours after he dies, Katherine skins him, taking everything in one big pelt except a small square of skin which she leaves, which contains the scar of the last time she stabbed him. So she hangs his skin from a meat hook on the architrave of a door in the lounge room.
Oh my God.
She then decapitates him and cooks part of his body,
No.
which she carves from his butt, serving up the meat with baked potato, pumpkin, beetroot, zucchini, cabbage, yellow squash, and gravy.
Oh, pleasant.
She then makes 2 place settings on the
Sunday
dinner
roast.
table. Each plate has a note, like a little place card, with the name of Price's children on it.
Oh,
so she was
bitch.
going to feed him to his own
fuck
children.
you.
Which
That
is
horrible.
just so fucked up.
Jesus Christ.
There's a third meal which they find, which has been tossed out the door onto the back lawn. So they've estimated that Katherine herself tried to also eat a meal but couldn't bring herself to finish it.
Well, you can cook a man's ass, but you can't eat it.
Yeah, we draw the line at
I will not
eating.
ingest this.
So Price's head is found in the pot with vegetables. At the time they find the water is around 40 to 50 degrees, which is indicating that the cooking has likely taken place like in the early morning.
Fuck.
So she's arranged his body sitting in his favourite chair with his left arm draped over an empty 1.25 litre soft drink bottle and his legs crossed.
What the fuck is happening?
Knight leaves a note on top of a photo of Price, which is blood-stained and covered in small pieces of flesh. And this is the exact note. It says, "Time got you back, Jonathan, for raping," which is spelled R-A-P-P-I-N-G, "my daughter," which is spelled D-O-U-T-E-R. "You to Beck," which is Price's daughter, "for Ross, for Little John, now play with Little John's dick, Jon Price." This is all found out to be a lie. So none of that is true.
Right.
So I don't know if she was trying to make herself look more innocent or...
She's not all there, clearly.
No, clearly. So Knight originally
This is so
Knight originally tries to plead manslaughter, which
What?
is thankfully rejected. And
He ran
she's-
into my knife 37 times.
and then I just had to chop off his head and
I couldn't let
cook
good
him.
meat go to waste.
Thankfully, she's not allowed to be tried for manslaughter, and she's tried with the murder of Jon Price.
Like, put that bitch away.
She initially pleads not guilty, claiming that she remembers nothing of the night. Her trial takes place October 2001. When the trial commenced, the judge, Justice Barry O'Keefe, offers the 60 jury prospects the option of being excused from the trial. Oh my god, I can't speak. Blah, blah.
It's a good thing you do this as a hobby.
Yeah, I know. Fuck. I'm not doing well today.
No, you're not. Just the episode you asked people to help you make this a bit more of a professional show. You're failing at doing the show.
So Justice Barry O'Keefe offers the 60 jury prospects the option of being excused due to the nature of the photographic evidence that they'd obviously have to present.
Yeah.
And 5 of them are like, yeah, bitch, I'll tap out. Thank you for the opportunity
That's
to not
me.
have to sit through this.
Yeah, I'm good.
So the justice that tried the case is quoted as saying, "It was carried out with considerable expertise and an obviously steady hand, so that his skin, including that of the head, face, nose, ears, neck, torso, genital organs, and legs, was removed so as to form one pelt. So expertly
Whoa.
was it done that after the post-mortem examination, the skin was able to be re-sewn onto Price's body in a way which indicated a clear and appropriate, albeit grisly, methodology."
Shit.
Which is how they could tell he'd been stabbed 37 times.
Fucking hell.
After several of the jurors drop out, the court is adjourned to the next day. But by the time the next day rolls around, Knight suddenly changes her plea from not guilty to guilty. With, like, no reasoning.
She's like, fuck it.
She undergoes psychiatric evaluation to determine if she mentally understands what it actually means to plead guilty. She does, and she's sentenced. No one to this day knows why she suddenly changed her mind, and despite being the one to make the guilty plea, she's always refused to accept responsibility for the murder, up until this day.
Even though she pled guilty.
Yeah. So when Timothy Lyons, who was the lawyer on the persecution side, starts describing the skinning, Katherine becomes hysterical and has to be sedated in court. On November 8th, Justice O'Keefe sentences her to life in prison with no parole, and her papers are literally marked as never to be released.
Yeah, as you fucking should.
Yeah. In 2006, Knight appeals the no parole thing, claiming that it's too severe of a punishment for the one killing. And thankfully, 3 justices dismissed the appeal, one of them writing, "This was an appalling crime almost beyond contemplation in a civilized society."
Sure, it's one killing, but what she did
And in the lead
is
up,
so fucking bizarre and horrendous, and like exactly what you were saying, the build up is it speaks for itself.
so she literally basically did what you see like those polar bear rugs. Like she got his head,
Holy
his body,
shit.
his arms, his legs, his genitals.
So she skinned his entire body, including his head,
Yeah.
bar that one place where she stabbed him,
Yeah.
and then cut his head off.
Yeah.
So it's a skinless head boiling in a pot with vegetables.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And then a skinless body propped up in a chair with its legs crossed, holding a fucking 1.25 litre of Coke or something.
The level of detail put it, like, at least with Ed Gein, the body was hanging up as you would hang up after butchering a deer. This is just
It's terrible.
fucking
It's
next
so
level.
terrible. Like, and because she worked in an abattoir for so many years, she had the skills to do it as well.
Shit.
It's so fucked up.
Fucking hell.
Yeah. Like, and another article I was reading was saying that, like, unsurprisingly, a lot of the police that attended the scene had to take their long service leave. Like, they never worked again because they were so messed up by what they found.
Considering just like I said with Ed Gein, that one detective who wanted to put him away so badly that it just weighed on him so much that he literally passed out from the stress of the case. Like,
yeah,
you can imagine in Australia that, like, you know, obviously we have the story of Wolf Creek and that Wolf Creek is based off of.
But yeah, she's it was a very full on story to
but like in Australia, this is not really a huge.
And I think that's why there's so much detail available on the case, because it just doesn't happen in Australia.
Yeah.
Stuff like this just doesn't happen.
It's kind of weird that Australia has these things like the Port Arthur shootings, where we have one of the biggest massacres on the planet.
Is it on the planet?
It was. I think it was. It was one of the biggest massacres.
I don't.
think
it was. It's to be honest.
The number of deaths hasn't been beaten. I don't think so. I don't think yet. But we have these instances where like this shit happens, and it's just such a dramatic thing for us because we're fortunate enough to be in essentially what New York is, but an entire country where like guns aren't really a thing.
Well, there's still I see what you mean, but yeah, guns are definitely still a thing.
But in terms of like, I mean more so like New York compared to the rest of America.
Yeah, it's like New York compared to Texas.
Yeah. Where it's just not really a huge thing. Like, we hear about fucking stabbings and, you know.
Yeah. No, it's but I think the terrifying image, and I'm so, like, I was low-key a little disappointed, but also, like, relieved that there aren't really any crime scene photos that I could find online.
Yeah, of course.
But she hung up his skin. This skin with his face, genitals, legs, arms, torso. She hung it up on, like, meat hooks from the door jamb. It's fucked up.
Jesus,
it's so messed
Christ.
up. Yeah.
Also, I just realized we should have said this at the start of the episode, but I guess this is kind of our crazy bitch episode, because we haven't really
that's
covered.
Right. You're doing a lady.
We haven't
as
really
well.
covered like female killers yet, or rather just evil females yet.
Well, we've started it with a bang.
We
Katherine
really
Knight, first female killer to be covered on Best Served Cold, started us with a bang, not a fizzle.
One of the most intense, I think, stories we've heard so far, really, and it's the first female killer that we've had. Like I said, like all these other killings are chilling and just downright horrifying, but that, it's one killing, but it's so fucking out there and intense.
And there's just so much detail. Like,
Yeah.
But one of our friends, shout out to Bryony if you're listening, was saying that because she used to live not in the town but out near that way. She was saying you can still drive past the house where it occurred. The house is still there.
Because where was that house?
Aberdeen. I think.
Right. Because I remember someone saying something about Helensburgh, which.
Yeah, I thought someone else said something about. I think we got confused about Helensburgh.
Right. Where is? Let me just look up where Aberdeen is.
It's
in
out
the Hunter
west.
region.
Yeah.
Right. This is like west. way west.
Yeah. It's like a little rural town.
Yeah.
So as well as the fact that it's already horrific on a major scale, like if someone in a city did this, it would still be horrifying. It's such a small country town where this happened.
This is like northwest of Newcastle. I'd say like a good couple hours northwest of Newcastle on the main road.
Yeah.
On the way to Tamworth.
We started it with a bang.
Fucking hell, that is intense. All props to researching that and managing to keep it down. That is fucked up.
Yeah, it was pretty messed up.
All right, well, I'm just going to jump right into my one. This one, low-key, I was going to do this one for the episode that we did the Golden State Killer on. But I was writing it and I kind of, was looking at it. I was like,
You just didn't get the vibe.
Yeah, I didn't get the vibe halfway
Sometimes,
through.
which is a weird fucking thing to say about serial killers.
Yeah, but and then I was doing the Golden State Killer, and that just kind of felt a bit more right for the time. I think for the episode as well.
Yeah, the killers, you gotta pass the vibe check, otherwise you don't get on the podcast.
Yeah, the vibe check on this one was not passing.
I will say the bar for vibe check is pretty low, but
yeah, it's a low vibe to pass. But we were thinking of for this week, like, you know, our respective ideas, and I don't know, this one just came back to me.
Well, we didn't coordinate both doing females. We just
No, it just happened. I think we wanted to cover, because we were covering so many men, and you made the point of, like, there aren't many shows or episodes or anything about female serial killers or just female murderers in general, and we kind of did the research, and there's just not a lot of female murderers or serial killers compared to the number of
males
murderers.
Yeah. But I feel like the ones you do have, they make up.
It's a very small percentage of the actual overall killers, but they, like you said, make up for what they lack in numbers.
Well, yeah, Katherine Knight almost like was as fucking creepy as Ed Gein, and she only
in my
killed
opinion,
one person.
That's not creepier, but way more intense. For me, that's fucking intense.
I think it's also because this was in 2000.
2006, I think you said?
No, she was, her trial was in 2006. Right. The murder happened in 2000. Like, I think there's something even more weirdly chilling about picturing people, like, with the internet.
20 years ago.
Like, watching Nickelodeon and all things that are modern things, while this woman is literally chopping up her husband.
The year my sister was born was when this is happening.
Yeah.
That's fucking terrifying. And at least with, like, Gein and Kemper and stuff, it's like 80s, 70s. You know.
Yeah, it feels almost less real because it's so long ago.
Yeah, it does. It feels fictional, or like exactly what you said. Like, and we've seen her on Mindhunter and everything, and covered before.
Yeah.
Whereas this is such an underground story that it's like fresh and new and. Well, cheers to that.
Yeah, we're going back to the 50s or 40s for yours, aren't we?
We are. We're going back. We're going super early. We're going back to World War II for my one. So I'll be talking about Ilse Koch, who was referred to as...
I'm such a child.
This is a German name. Do not make fun of the Germans.
You need to prepare me for things like that. You know, I'm 7 at heart.
Well, then take this as your hard cock warning. Because
there's any mention of like poo-poos or wee-wees or cocks, I need to be warned so I don't giggle. There's
a lot of cock in this story, so prepare to hear the word cock quite a bit.
Okay, I'll restrain myself.
I'll get it out of your system. So she was referred to as the bitch of Buchenwald, which was the concentration camp that she was in charge of along with her husband. During the Holocaust. So this woman was a sexual sadist, a fanatic of human experimentation, just a real interesting but despicable woman that almost got away with her crimes, but you'll find out at the end of the story what ends up happening to dear old Ilse Koch.
Yeah, spoiler alert, obviously it's not a happy ending, I hope.
So she was born Margaret Ilse Kohler in Dresden, Germany. And apologies again for pronunciations, I'm not German. On the 22nd of September, 1906. Her early life, she was regarded as a friendly, happy girl, popper at school. And her father was a labourer, her mother was a housewife throughout her life. Like most girls in Germany during this time, I think with most places during this time, really, she was raised up to learn how to cook, clean, take care of the household. She left school early around when she was about 15 to go work at a cigarette factory full-time. And she began taking classes in accounting at a local college until she landed a job as a bookkeeper. Now, this is important. She later joins the Nazi Party early on because she came from... It's thought that because she came from such a poor family and a humble upbringing, the Nazi Party promised lower class citizens that they would rebuild Germany and break out of the economic depression that resulted from World War
Yeah,
One.
that's the messed up thing about Hitler and his whole
They
regime.
were
Was
tantalizing
they
to these people.
genuinely had these people who just wanted a better life for themselves. They had them completely brainwashed.
And these are not just people who have to wait a couple of weeks before they can afford to, buy a new pair of shoes
iPhone,
or buy a new iPhone.
They're
This is
struggling to eat.
they're barely eating 2 potatoes a day kind of depression.
Yeah, these people are desperate.
Not to excuse what the Nazis did,
Oh,
but this is...
No. I'm not excusing what I'm saying that was part of how it was so easy for them
This is how they
to
how
solidify
Hitler
their
became
position,
power
and then by the time everyone realized what was going on, it was too late.
Which I think I want to cover this, just the Nazis overall a bit more maybe later on in another episode, because it's just such a...
I have a chat with my dad about it. My dad is fascinated by World War II and Hitler. A
To
lot
go
of people are. 'Cause
Sorry?
a lot of people are fascinated because he was
this
man
is-
with one idea who...
And it's something that, again, with we've talked about it before a lot with these serial killers, is you kind of know the names and the stories behind it, but you're not up to date. Like, I personally know what happened with the Holocaust. I know what happened with World War II, but I know very little about what happened.
Yeah.
Like, I just know what the brass sort of what's on the surface. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to dig deeper into it and kind of research it a bit more. To get back into it, though, the Nazis obviously promised lower class citizens that would break out of the economic depression. So to the poor and uneducated citizens of Germany, fascism seems like it was the best solution for their dying country at the time. So Ilse began to take the ideals of the Aryan master race and the Nazis' feelings of anti-Semitism to heart. She began to take this into her own personal life. She meets a like-minded man who would later become her husband, named Karl Koch, 9 years older than Ilse, and going through a divorce at the time with his first wife, as she disagreed with his Nazi philosophies.
Good girl.
So he was also working for the Nazis and the police at the time. He grew up in a life of crime. So he and his brother had a criminal record for theft, and they worked as informants for the police. Elsa found Karl's life of crime and background very attractive, and it was a key factor in building their relationship. So in 1936, the two get married. After Hitler comes into power, leading the Nazi party, the couple are rewarded for being early adopters of Nazism. Karl is given a position as a high-ranking SS officer, and the two of them suddenly are overwhelmed with wealth and power.
And after her having lived in
Nothing.
poverty.
Both of them living in lower class citizens.
Yeah.
No, like, the country already is a very poor country. To be poor in a poor country is very, very little experience. So, Karl, before he's put in charge of the now renowned, well, not renowned, but now popular concentration camp, he was a warden for a prison in Berlin. He was a fucking nut job, this guy. He would force prisoners to stuff themselves into doghouses and eat from bowls. Whenever he was around them, they had to kneel and bark. And if they didn't, he would beat them. Or, the guard would beat them. If they did anything wrong, hot tar was shoved up their anuses.
Oh!
This was one of his notorious torture methods. His wife, Elsa, wasn't turned off by the brutal reputation of her husband, but in fact fell in love with it and she wanted to be part of the process. So this torture was noted not only by her wife, but the Nazi Party, and they think of this unique skill set could be used to run a camp full of the enemies of the Third Reich. So they are in the middle of being awarded a concentration camp to manage. When Ilse finds out that they're going to be running a concentration camp, she gets some practice working at a prison camp called Sachsenhausen.
I don't like where this is going.
It's not necessarily specified, at least from what I read, what she did, but it's similar. She worked there, was in control of several prisoners, and took into her own hands torture tactics.
Just quickly before you go on, I think before you get too into it, we should probably add just like a little trigger warning. If you are someone who has close family members that suffered through the Holocaust, this may not be the episode for you.
This gets into some pretty heavy shit. So.
We are not in any way trying to offend anyone or upset anyone. We're just doing what we do, which is presenting facts about some very horrific people.
So please, if this is a bit
if
too much for you.
So if it's going to be something that's, just next week. Come back for next week's episode.
Okay. So Ilse and Karl Koch are not just in charge of running the concentration camp, but they're even there for the construction of the camp. So they're there every step of the way for this camp. At the gates of the camp, and I saw images of this. It's haunting. The gate of the camp has a sign saying "Jedem das sein," which means to each his own. Supposedly, the context of this was to say that everyone gets what's coming to them. In it was their own personal little rub it in the faces of people who were unfortunate enough to be taken to these camps, as the two truly believed that everyone brought to the concentration camp was deserved to be treated less than human because they were less than human. So Buchenwald is the largest of all the concentration camps. There were no gas chambers at Buchenwald. Instead, there were no gas chambers for killing people quickly or efficiently like with other concentration camps. Instead, they preferred to keep their prisoners there for longer and more hostile tactics in executions. So, shootings to the head, torture, human experimentation. It's all pretty fucked up. The main purpose of Buchenwald was mostly just slave labor for things that were regarded as useful for the Third Reich. So prisoners at Buchenwald were kept alive most of them were kept alive for years. So this is way longer than the average lifespan for any other prison at any other camp. So for example, Auschwitz the prisons had a lifespan of around 3 to 4 months.
Jesus.
And these guys are getting kept alive for years.
So it's just like living hell.
It is. It's like a prison, but you've done nothing wrong. You're just born a certain person. So when building the camp, Elsa requests that their family must live in a mansion built on the same property as the concentration camp. In Nazi Germany, the Nazis gave men and women different roles to play in society. The perfect German woman was supposed to be happy to do housework. They were supposed to stay strong in the face of adversity, and they were meant to always be loyal to their husband. High-ranking leaders in the Nazi Party were meant to be leading examples of this. However, wives of SS officers weren't expected to be doing all the work themselves, as a common German woman would. However, Ilse Koch took full advantage of her position because she didn't want to do any housework at all, have any chores at all.
Want to lift a finger?
So her goal for this camp was basically to never lift a finger, to have all the work done for her. So she decided that the prisoners from the concentration camps would all be her personal slaves. She forced everyone to refer to her as, and now I'm going to very poorly pronounce this, Gnagdigi Frau. Gnagdigi Frau. That's it. An old-fashioned term which was traditionally only really used for women of nobility. It's essentially a polite way to address a woman. So, madam, ma'am.
But like very formal.
Very, very, very formal. Like you would address someone, say like we're watching The Great, right? And the Empress of Russia. You would address a woman of nobility.
Of like high ranking. Yeah.
She never lifts a finger to do anything herself at home at this point. So she has slaves coming into a house or taking care of everything within the house, the chores, the cooking, essentially. So she eventually gets bored with her home life because she's literally not doing anything. So she decides to put the prisoners to good use and build a gigantic indoors sport arena worthy enough of an Olympic event. That's
so odd and random.
Very random until you figure out what her main hobby was. She loved horseback riding. So she wanted an area for her to practice horseback riding.
Bitch was making her own equestrian center.
She was. But it wasn't just an equestrian center. It was like a huge fucking arena for all things sports.
See, as a horse girl, I will say...
You're crazy?
Yes. There's something...
Yeah, there is.
Because horse riding is so... At the same time as it's so elegant, it's fucking terrifying and so dangerous. Like I think something has to be like a little bit, speaking from experience, like something has to be wrong upstairs for you to be like, I want to get on this animal that I'm just praying does what
I read something that that was hilarious to me, that horse girls are essentially car guys, but the reverse.
Yeah, but... Not
reverse, but like the equivalent.
But like a car does what you tell it to.
Well, a
like
car,
a sentient animal that can
tell a car what to do, and you're praying and these are people who are souping up their cars and making them even more difficult to use. So they could potentially die every single time they get into their car. So it's a similar thing.
I know, this is you're touching on a very
I get it.
sore spot, because all high school I had to deal with, it was the horse girls versus the motorcycle boys. Oh, motorcycling is just as... No, it's not. Shut up.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue. Okay. We got off.
So this indoor sports arena, so it cost over 200,000 Reichsmarks to build.
That's a lot of money.
The conversion rate, I believe, at the time was one Reichsmarks for each $2.5. So with inflation, that would have been the equivalent of spending over $1 million US.
Shit.
And this is money that they don't own. This is their camp money. So horseback riding still didn't satisfy her boredom. So she discovers that there's a rule in the camp that if any prisoner looks at the commander's wife, they would be shot on sight. Knowing this,
I don't like this.
She gets extremely excited and starts dressing provocatively in tight clothing on the daily, showing her cleavage off on purpose. Most wives of SS officers in charge of camps would never get involved with the prisoners. Most likely, they were living in some sort of denial over what their husbands were doing.
Yeah, 100%.
What they were living in.
You just like stick your head in the sand and just...
where you're in the best of a bad situation, considering the state of your country.
Well, yeah, because not that obviously nothing excuses the behavior of people at these camps, but so many of the times if you were seen to disagree with your husband, or if you wanted to leave your husband, it was seen as you were disagreeing with the Nazis as a whole.
Exactly. And this is 1940s Germany.
Yeah.
So this is a tough time for women as well.
Yeah. So as horrific as it is, these women are just trying to
fucking live,
to survive themselves.
So that can be said about most wives of SS officers, but not Ilse Koch. She wants to be involved with everything to do with the camp, and she's excited at the thought that people around her are starving and dying. This literally excited her. So she thought a lot of herself. Supposedly, when her husband was away, she would command officers to bring her groups of young male soldiers, and she forced them to strip and undress until they were completely naked. Another thing she would do
So
was...
these are soldiers,
These are soldiers, yeah.
Right.
It started with that, then it gets worse. She then moved on to stripping down to lingerie. She would wear sexy lingerie around the yard, and she would lay down in front of the yards where behind the gates where sex-starved male prisoners would be, trying to provoke male prisoners. And if any of them ever glanced at her body or became aroused, they were immediately taken by the guards and shot in the head.
That's so messed up.
At some point, she specifically requests to have teenage boys working for her at her home as her servants. So many of her other servants said that she would order them to bring her breakfast in bed, and she would wear nothing but a nightgown. And just like the men in the yard, if they looked at her body or got aroused, she would have them killed. And considering they're teenage boys, it's very likely a lot of them couldn't help but get aroused, even if they
were terrified.
Terrified of her.
Yeah.
It's, they're young,
Just happens.
15-year-old boys. So this man, I wanted to read a bit more. I want to read a bit more into this man. He's a Holocaust survivor. Ilse Koch. He was 15 years old at the time when he was working at the concentration camp. He said the Koch mansion was on the edge of the camp. So whenever he was working there, he would look out beyond the fence and see free people going about their own business, and would often contemplate why he wasn't one of those persons. He thought that life outside of this camp was just a fantasy, which is really very sad. On every Sunday, Ilse Koch would allow him to eat 2 boiled potatoes. He would carry them back to his barracks where all the prisoners were staying at the time. He would peel the potato skins off and throw them onto the floor because he didn't like the skins. Prisoners would literally jump over each other's and stumble and jump onto the potato skins just to eat them because they were so starved. And they were that hungry and that desperate for food. For potato skins.
Seems like a bit of a dick move on his behalf to throw them on.
He didn't know. He's a 15-year-old boy.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
He has no idea that they're that,
Yeah.
Okay. So here's where we get into some of the pretty intense shit. So
We've not already been talking about the intense shit?
As you probably may or may not know, all concentration camps led by the Third Reich had some form of human experimentation going on during that time.
And Joseph Stengel was like the renowned name for that. Yeah, he did
which would be a good person to cover as well.
He did the twin experiments.
I don't know. I didn't read that much into it. I would like to read a bit more into it, maybe cover it on a later episode.
He's messed up. They're all fucked in the head.
So, in Buchenwald, what they were mostly doing was they were poisoning people on purpose with deadly chemicals in order to find potential antidotes. So these were all prisoners, Jewish prisoners that they held in the camps. They would take them down to these testing areas, and they would inject them with literal poisons to try and find cures. They would inject homosexuals with concoctions they developed themselves that they believe would hopefully turn them straight. And at some point, Elsa decides she wants to spectate these experiments, so she saw it as a potential new hobby, essentially. She, at this time, also elevated her sexual sadism to riding around on a horse through camp, and she would dress provocatively again, trying to get people to glance at her. What she would also do when she was riding through these camps is she's looking for prisoners who had interesting tattoos. She had this weird fascination with prisoners with tattoos. She approaches one of the camp doctors, Eric Wagner, and asks him if he can conduct a study to see if tattoos have any correlation to criminal behavior. Now, this is extremely against protocol. If you own or you manage or you own a concentration camp, you can't make a decision on what to experiment or ask someone to conduct experiments on your behalf. The experiments were meant to aid the Third Reich, so they had to have some sort of purpose.
Yeah.
However, Eric Wagner agrees against all protocol codes to do these tests. So during these tests, people were obviously the people were obviously killed, and their bodies were taken away to be dissected. This was also so that Elsa could keep their skin.
Oh no.
So at some point, she was riding around camp, commanding men to stop and strip, where she would then walk the lines of the naked men, sizing them up, checking out their bodies, picking out the ones who had the best, most interesting tattoos to her, and they were selected for these experiments. Once they were dead, she obviously had their skin. Her new hobby was then to transform their skin to use them for household items like lampshades, knife sheaths, book covers. At some point, she decides that this is a perfect opportunity to come up with some Christmas gifts. She commands a group of Jewish prisoners to do the work of creating large quantities of trinkets made of human leather. So fellow Jewish prisoners...
Do they know?
They know, yeah, of course they do.
Oh my god, that's so fucked up. Oh.
She's forcing fellow Jewish prisoners to make trinkets out of human leather of previously Jewish prisoners. She wanted to send these Christmas gifts out to other SS officers in charge of concentration camps. There were rumors around that she used several body parts throughout her house, Ed Gein style. One of them apparently was that she used human thumbs as light switches. What
is it with these people and using weird...
Yep.
Oh.
According to a couple of her servants, she was having affairs with a doctor named Valdemar Hoven and Deputy Commandant Hermann Florsted. When Karl Koch would leave for his Nazi duties, Elsa would stay overnight at Hoven's house. Hoven was also supposedly fond of human experimentation, so that's where they had a connection. When Karl Koch, at some point during his life, contracted syphilis, he ordered the execution of the person who gave the diagnosis, so no one would find out about his embarrassing flaws in his marriage.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously, it didn't come from him. It didn't come from nowhere.
Mm.
If you know anything about syphilis, and you're in a committed relationship and it just shows up, there's a reason.
Yeah. There's only two answers, and if you're not one of them, you know what the other one is.
Okay, so we're going to 1942. Both Ilse and Karl are taken to court for misappropriating funds of the Buchenwald camp and their over-the-top methods of torture. Most of the human experiments at Buchenwald were often made up on the spot by the Koch couple, which is 100% not allowed.
Mm.
The order for experimentations had to have come from someone higher up in the Nazi Party. They were only to be conducted for a clear and decisive reason to help the Third Reich, such as proving that the Aryan race was a superior race.
Mm.
They wanted experiments essentially to justify the mass genocide that they were conducting at the time.
Well, yeah, because they were probably aware of the fact that if they lost, they needed to try and cover up these horrific war crimes.
They needed a reason for the mass public and other countries to show this is why we're doing this. Yeah. So Ilse and Karl are put in jail awaiting trial. 2 years later, they're finally taken to court with a man named Hermann Pister taking over their post at the concentration camp. The judge concludes... So they're in
jail for 2 years?
For 2 years until they're taken to trial.
So that's 1944?
Yeah, so right. I just said that. The judge concludes that... Or maybe I didn't, I don't know. The judge concludes that no matter how manipulative Elsa may have been,
the responsibility falls on Carl at the end of the day, as he is the commander of the camp and he should have the final say-so on everything. The judge suspends all charges against Ilse and she's set free. Carl is sentenced to death for his crimes and was executed by a firing squad a year later, 1945.
Wow.
During this time, Ilse shows little to no remorse on her crimes against humanity and the death of her husband, and even goes on living a normal life in Germany with her then 3 children that she had with Carl. The same year, obviously, I think this was the time where the war ended. Hitler's dead. America and all allies help free concentration camp prisoners all over the country. This particular time, one of these camps obviously is Buchenwald. So what they did was they invited German people in the Weimar to witness what had been going on in this camp happening right next to where they were all living. They saw, amongst other things, 80,000 people crammed into a space that was meant to fit 8,000 people.
Jesus.
Corpses lying around in front of the crematorium. American soldiers discovered a collection of human body parts, including several human organs displayed inside glass cases, shrunken heads, and obviously household items covered in human skin. They take testimonies from prisoners who had been living in Buchenwald for years, and when they heard about Ilse Koch's stories, they immediately arrest her for her crimes against humanity. During the trial, she insists that all household items with this weird human leather are made from goat skin, not human. However, most of them had obvious tattoos on them, and along with the hundreds of testimonies from prisoners that lived there the entire time she owned the camp, they're
like, you're lying, bitch.
They were also, the people who testified against her were also people who literally, it was their job to butcher human bodies and make them into trinkets. They were the people who testified against her. There's multiple photographs proving that these objects actually exist. However, there's no actual physical proof tying her as the person who ordered them to make it. There's just hearsay.
Yeah.
When in jail in 1947, so this is during the time I think she's waiting for trial. They can't really put her away for life yet. So while she's waiting during this whole trial period, she becomes pregnant after having an affair with a fellow German prisoner. She has a son who she names Uwe, and was forced to give him away the second he was born. In video footage of the trial that she was in after this happens, she's visibly angry, indignant, and showing no remorse. US military governor, who was named General Lucius D. Clay, believed that there wasn't enough physical evidence to send her to her death. The most he could give her was 4 years of hard labor, and she served the full 4 years.
Is that it?
After she was released, she is then taken back, arrested again for a third time by Germany this time. And she was given a life sentence.
Germany was like, we don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like,
do you know, like, we're cleaning this fucking shit up.
Yeah.
We're cleaning this fuck. Like,
well, they also had they were being watched by the entire world.
I think also I want to do a bit more research too on this society within Germany, which was basically called the People's Party, I think it was called. They had no idea of the things that were happening in these camps. They knew there was a genocide of sorts. I think even then it was kind of like not
well I guess like you would think of the average German person just like knowing that there's these horrific things, but like you wouldn't exactly like leave your local town, I guess. So
there's one man who testifies against her all 3 trials. His name is Dr. Morgan. He's quoted as saying, and this is a direct quote, "She was a hussy who rode horseback in sexy underwear in front of the prisoners and then noted down for punishment the numbers of those who looked at her. She lay around in her garden in front of prisoners, simply primitive. But she had nothing to do with the lampshade business, and she did not deserve such a draconic punishment. She was a victim of horror stories."
What the fuck?
Keep in mind, this is someone who's meant to be defending her character.
Right.
So even someone who's defending her is saying
Still calls her a
she's
hoe.
a fucking hoe. So Elsa has 4 children at this time. She has 3 with Carl Koch, now dead, and her son that she's had while waiting trial. Her son Artwin, who is one of the kids that she has with Carl, grows older, learns what she's done, and finds out how much people hate his family. He unfortunately decides that the guilt and the shame is too much for him, and he commits suicide.
Oh, that's sad.
Her 2 daughters with Carl were able to get married, change their names, and move on with their lives completely estranging themselves from their mother. Her son Uwe, who's now known as Uwe Kola, spends most of his life being passed around several different foster families. When he's 19, working as an insurance salesman, he decides he wants to learn who his parents were. He gets a hold of his birth certificate and finds out who his mother was.
Oh, can you imagine?
Yep. He reads about her trial and decides, after building up a whole stomach worth of courage, he decides to visit her in prison. She's extremely happy to see him, as she doesn't get any little to no visitors, as her eldest son's unfortunately passed away and her daughters are estranged themselves.
Who she is, yeah.
Elsa tells Uwe that everything bad said about her is a complete lie. He knows for a fact that she wasn't innocent due to the simple fact that she was running a concentration camp.
Yeah.
However, he desperately wants a connection with his mother and loves her soon after unconditionally. He begins visiting her once a month, and after a few visits, he becomes so convinced that his mother couldn't be responsible for committing such horrible crimes. She tries to convince him to get a lawyer to set her free. So this doesn't happen because it's simply not fucking possible.
Yeah.
It's her last attempt to try and persuade and convince
Yeah, and
a man.
she's like emotionally blackmailing her
Well,
son.
this is something she's been doing her whole entire life. It's kind of similar with your chick, where you kind of think, how the fuck is she getting away with all these things? She must be, and
but
the same thing. She's not a very pretty looking woman.
Pull over people.
1967. She's 61 at the time. She realizes that Uwe was her last hope to manipulate someone to get herself out of prison, and she's failed. She ties her bed sheets together in a cell and she hangs herself. And this is the death of Ilse Koch.
I mean, I don't want to celebrate people's death, but
This was someone who needed to die.
She was evil. That is evil. Because we talk about a lot of, that was really heavy. You did well to get through that.
Thank you. Yeah.
We talk a lot about serial killers, and obviously everyone we talk about, it kind of goes into the whole question of what does it mean to be evil? Is a human being truly evil? But that, I think there's a big difference between someone who is a serial killer, Ed Kemper or David Berkowitz, and then someone who is not even necessarily a direct killer,
Never
just
killed someone directly.
takes pleasure in
And
other
was responsible
people's
for hundreds of thousands of deaths.
physical and mental anguish.
Torture, human experimentation, manipulation.
Yeah, that was
intense. And it's exactly that. We find that line between this is someone who's a clear serial killer, and the things that they've done is so beyond evil. But we also find this other side of it where people who, and like with your killer, one murder, but it's such a horrific case, and the person who's had such a long history of such bizarre events and manipulation and violence and upbringing, and it's a whole different. This episode is not only just the bad bitch episode, but it's the psychological torment and
this was we both picked some like full on
just horrific aspect of these people. And I think that's what's the most interesting thing about this show is it's not just let's talk about a serial killer every episode. It's let's talk about people that fascinate us.
Yeah, and are just
because of how
horrific
despicable
beings,
and disgusting they were.
I think there is something, I think as a normal human, like you hear about someone like that and it just makes you so deeply question how you could do that to another human being. Like I think that's also why so many people are fascinated by Nazi Germany and the Holocaust, because it just
how can you fathom letting this happen?
Yeah, like how can you because she started out as a normal human.
Yeah.
Like how can you...
Someone who was born poor in a poor country during a time of Great Depression.
And turns into this horrific, depraved...
Is given money, power, a position of high authority, and is just completely changed.
Yeah,
she goes from being the Audrey Hepburn who's in love with the bad boy James Dean to just straight up
Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah,
fucking awful.
Intense, man.
Let's talk about something else to lighten the mood. That was also a really long episode, so if you're still with us,
it's about the same. It's about an hour and a half. Yeah. That's about the same. Yeah, our typical time is about an hour and a half.
I think we've been like an hour, haven't we? Hour and 8 minutes.
No, this has been an hour and a half.
Okay.
I can see it right there.
No, like our normal episodes. I'm mainly around
I think our normal episodes are also an hour and a half ish.
Okay.
I've listened to 2 of ours personally, and they've
only 2.
Yeah, only 2. Unfortunately, I have little time to listen to podcasts.
I have listened to all of them, so you are a fake
as should
fan.
You faithful listeners.
As should everyone hearing this. Please listen to every episode.
Yeah.
What's something good that's happened to you this week?
Well, I cooked really cool orange chicken.
You did. You made some really nice chicken.
Yeah. Loosely based on the Panda Express orange chicken, which I haven't actually ever had in my life because I think it's an American-only chain. But I found a recipe courtesy of Joshua Weissman on YouTube, and he has this really great recipe on how to make orange chicken, and I thought I did a pretty fucking stand-up job.
It was quite delicious, I will say.
It's just like a next-level sweet and sour chicken.
It was quite delicious.
Battered, nice, just really good.
And you've had heaps of like media and press.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
So
that's been really exciting.
As you probably know, like Sleepwalker's out at this present time. And I mean, we've just had so many press opportunities coming up with the single launch.
Which was really exciting because it was a slow start.
It was a slow burn. It was like I think I said before in one of the episodes, I was just having fucking panic attacks, just trying to get it out there. And, you know, at the start, it was just me sort of doing it. And then, you know, obviously I had the help of my lovely partner, Laura, who helped take the load off a bit. And I think it's been very successful so far, and I'm really happy with our progress. You know, we've got the statistics up to 2 days ago, and it's like nearly 300 streams already. And it came out on Monday. At this point in time, it's Thursday. So, you know, within 2 days, it's got 300 streams. It's pretty fucking good for a band who's just released their first single ever, with like no prior history as a band.
Yeah, and like no built up social media following or anything like that.
We literally just officially started as a band this year.
No, you've done very well.
Yeah, I'm very happy.
And then aside from that, we've just been slowly hanging out with our friends again, which has been really nice because I think after like
people we haven't seen for so long
of not getting to see people, we have some friends who moved into a new apartment. They lived in their same apartment for like 10 years and they moved out, and we hadn't been able to see it for ages, and that was really nice. We got to have dinner with them.
They did that just before quarantine as well. We didn't get to see anything to do with
that new place.
Yeah, and just chilling out, hanging out with the kitten.
Yeah, she's fucking tearing our lives apart, but God love her.
She's pretty cute though. And yeah, just I feel like it's a very anticlimactic time to be trying to talk about things because just nothing is really.
It's like, what did you do today? Oh, I've discovered that the fridge has an orange light instead of an LED light. And that's literally the highlight of it.
We got a new lamp. That was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I got a cool, like, industrial lamp off Facebook Marketplace. And, yeah, just living life. That's about it.
Yeah. Just straight up. Just trying to stay healthy in the mind and in the body.
And I hope you all are too.
Yeah. I know, like, there's a whole thing around, like, quarantine body where everyone's like, oh, I can't go to the gym and stay healthy. But
I do miss the gym.
Yeah, I do. But I implore you, if this is a difficult time for you, then definitely find the time
do
to
a workout. Chloe Ting. We've been doing Chloe Ting's workouts.
Chloe Ting on YouTube. She has programs that are for free.
Oh my god, it hurts.
Intense.
So much.
And they're like 10
minutes.
10-minute workouts.
So you have no excuse not to do like one. Just, if you're listening to this and you're not drunk and you're not driving, do a Chloe Ting workout.
Yeah,
right
maybe
now.
if you're driving, just do some butt kegels.
Yeah, just like squeeze your butt.
Yeah.
Squeeze it. Squeeze it.
Yeah.
Oh, I think the series finale of Drag Race comes out this weekend.
It does.
Yes? Is that this weekend? This Saturday?
Yeah. So when this episode comes out, which would be this...
Tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow. So by the time this episode comes out, it'll be the day after. So Saturday. This Saturday coming up.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I keep forgetting we're not making these in advance anymore.
Yeah, I keep flicking between. I can't decide who I want to win. I'm honestly kind of happy with any of them. I wish Heidi was top 3.
Yeah,
but I love Crystal. I love Jada. I love Gigi.
I love Crystal too. I think she's her own.
She's just
thing.
So quirky.
I
and
think
that
Gigi's
mullet...
got all the makings of the drag queen of this season.
And Jada just has that...
Jada's been flawless this season, but there's just something about it that I don't...
I think it's that you don't like the pageant queens.
No, it's not that I don't like the pageant queens. I'm not a huge fan of them, for sure. But there's something about her that doesn't stand out as much to me as Gigi or Crystal do.
I just want, like, a surprise, like Heidi comes back and Heidi wins. I'd be so happy if
you know
Heidi
what I mean?
won.
Like Crystal come out in the most bizarre, like, out of the box thing, and she's had such a huge transformation this entire season as well.
Yeah, that's very true.
Gigi will kill it with some
Gigi's kind of been like flawless from start to finish.
Amazing looks, like some really awesome, very fashionable, very like, you know, something you would
haute couture,
something you would think someone would wear, but just completely flipped on its head to the point where you're like, oh my god, I wouldn't have thought it in that way.
It's been such a strong season. Like, I can't wait. All Stars starts next weekend.
Yeah. I wish they talked a little bit on the Sherry Cox thing in the
Sherry who?
Sherry Pie, sorry.
I think they were trying to do the right thing in giving her as least amount of airtime as possible.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I think it's the best thing. But I just want some shade.
Yeah, like you're curious about it.
Shade.
But
I want some shade thrown a bit on it.
Yeah. Anyway,
right. Well, to the other 90% of the people who are listening to this who aren't
Drag Race
fans, we'll wrap it up.
Sorry,
let's wrap it up then. I need to pee and we need to work out and
I need some water.
Yeah, we need some water.
I'm so tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week.
Next week, fam.
Bye.